Thank you, Aaron. Yeah, this is hopefully going to go smoothly. I decided it was going to be a multimedia event, and you'll see in a minute. So let me get started here. It's pretty dangerous to put a professor up on stage. It means 50 minutes and a quiz. I promise it won't be 50 minutes, but there will be a quiz. So I want to start out with a little trip back. We're talking about an organization that's been around 42 years. So I decided we need to take a trip back in the Wayback Machine. So how many remember the infamous overhead transparency projector? The focal point of every classroom and conference, right? Well, then life got even better, and we had the slide projector. I chose a couple of key overheads and slides here about ice dams, that's fitting, I think, for Minnesota and for my career. And now, if you had a slide projector and a slide tray full of slides and a screen, you were an expert. And if you travel more than 30 miles, you could be a consultant. So anyway, back to our Wayback Machine. Won't show up really well, but how many were at the 10th anniversary conference in North Carolina in 1992? A few, yeah, right here up front. And then, as Aaron mentioned, in our 25th anniversary, EEBA was back to St. Paul, back to Minnesota where we started. You'll hear more about that, and celebrated our 25th anniversary just down the street, actually. All right, so enough for that Wayback Machine. How about, I remember when I actually fit in this sweatshirt. And even more spectacular, I remember when I had hair under that hat. So in some of this EEBA swag and memorabilia and whatnot will be available at a booth or a table here during the course of the conference. So let's go. So EEBA's had a few name changes, but the acronym always stayed the same. We went from the Energy Efficient Building Association to Energy Environmental Building Association in 2002. And then EEBA had a structural change and changed the name as well to EEBA, or Energy and the Environmental Building Alliance in 2008. So I said there'd be a quiz. So the Energy Efficient Building Association was born out of a conference that was held in Rochester, Minnesota in 1994. What was that? Well, EEBA wasn't born in 83. EEBA was born, you'll see in a minute. So there's a conference in 1984. Does anybody know what conference it was? Super Installation Conference, absolutely. Sponsored by the Rochester Vocational Technical Institute, organized by Jeannie Brownback, and we had attendees there from US, Canada, and Europe. In 1995, well, I should back up here, maybe, we'll see. So, as Alexander Hamilton would say, I was in the room. It was actually the bar. And there's a group of some esteemed colleagues here, some of our legacy members or legend members, and sitting around the table, decided it was time to form an association around the idea of super insulated houses. But they decided that was a little narrow. If you all recall, back then we were doing passive solar, earth sheltered, super insulated, dome homes, all kinds of alternative, quote unquote, high performance homes. They decided to label it the Energy Efficient Building Association. And this is our founding board of directors. Jeannie Brownback, Brian Curran, a builder out of Montana, Howard Faulkner, who's actually an academic, University of Southern Maine. Ned Nissen, does anybody remember Energy Design Update? And that was Ned's magazine, just a fantastic, bulletin, if you will, during that period of time. Harold Orr from Saskatchewan, National Research Council of Canada. And then Oliver Drayup came on quickly to replace Jeannie as she was made the executive director. Here was an early mantra: beware of the eggheads. So what was a little thin on that original board of directors? Builders. And so it wanted to be a builder association, and they felt very strongly about that. In '87, added 3 builder members: Bill Ike, Doug George, and Don Gaddis. Iowa, New Hampshire, and Michigan. Here's some of the other early board members. You're going to see a few of those folks today as part of the EEBA Legends. And I think if you ever see these folks, give them a little thank you for how their vision and guidance got us to where we are today. Quiz number 2. So EEBA spent 3 conferences in Minneapolis following the first 2 conferences. First conference was '83, it was called the Super Installation Forum. '84 was the second International Super Installation Conference. And then EEBA was formed, and so the first EEBA labeled EEBA conference would have been in Minneapolis in '85. So EEBA decided it was important to kind of move around, have a presence outside Minnesota. What state do you think has had the most EEBA conferences after Minnesota? Any guesses? Colorado, yep. Oh, I'm sorry, I did the wrong one. I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so after we left Minneapolis, you'll know the answer to quiz 3. After we left Minneapolis, we went to Portland, Maine, and of course our executive director now is there. And I also want to mention that we have proceedings from most of the early conferences, 85, 6 through 94, 5. And they'll be again on the table available if people want to peruse those. Has the EEBA conference ever been held outside the U.S.? Actually, I misspoke. Quiz 4 is coming up. Absent-minded professor. Colorado. Yeah. Well, in fact, the EEBA conference has been outside of Minnesota. After that trip to Maine, we went to Winnipeg, Canada, 1989. It was pretty chilly. Yeah, Aaron talked about the nice weather here. It wasn't so nice there for that conference. It was minus 20-something, 30 C for our Canadian friends. And yet it had an attendance of about 350 people. So this international presence was very strong early in EEBA's history. Very strong tenets and presentations from super installation leaders from Scandinavia, Sweden and Denmark. The Canadians were in there too, of course. And then I found the 92-93 EEBA directory, 364 members. 10% of the members were from Canada, 30-some odd members from Canada. And we had members from Australia, Guam, Italy, Romania, and Mexico. I probably misspoke again, I guess. Okay, quiz 4 is not Colorado. EEBA joined another national organization to hold a joint conference. It ended up being one of the largest EEBA conferences, I believe, ever. It was 850 plus, something like that. Anybody remember what organization that might have been? ACI? No. We worked alongside ACI, Affordable Comfort, for a long time, but it was the New England Solar Energy Association, and the conference was held in Boston, Massachusetts. I got a bonus question on here. This table right here can't answer. So 2 of our EEBA legends were married at the Boston conference. You know who they might have been? Joe and Betsy, yep, absolutely. Officiated by John Tooley, another long-term. John's here. Oh, great. Excellent. Now we get to the question we've already answered. Okay, so Minnesota's had 9 conferences. As Aaron mentioned, the last one here was 2007. But it was really important to maintain, carry on, build the tent bigger and bigger. throughout the country, and so national presence was really important, and the conference started to do the circuit. So there's 3 states that have had more than 2 conferences. You know one of them. Anyone else want to guess on the other 2? Arizona, okay. Utah? Utah has 2. Oregon? Texas was the 3rd one. So Colorado, Arizona, and Texas. Utah had a couple North Carolina, there was a couple others, so I left those off. But anyway, just wanted to give you a feel for kind of where we've been throughout our history. But EEBA was really a lot bigger than a conference, very, very quickly, in fact. EEBA had a bookstore that had all kinds of publications that they kind of commissioned and or publications done by others. They sold software, some of the old software. You may remember Hot Can, etc., right? Yeah, Joe chuckles. But anyway, it was very successful. Of course, we've kind of moved away from all this paper and stuff and books and things like I have here. You recognize the lack of hair, maybe a few other clues. I'm a retired professor now, and that means you clean your office, and that's what's happening here. We had a quarterly newsletter. We had an annual design competition. So now, of course, that's been taken over by other kinds of awards, but EEBA was hosting its annual design competition. We had the EEBA Awards, which have continued on in various forms. And then there was a real push, again, to build that presence, carry the message, the mission and message out through a speakers bureau, regional training, and soon to follow Houses at Work that you'll hear more about, I'm sure. Today, those activities continue in many, many ways. Obviously, they've morphed and look different than they used to, and now EEBA sponsors many, many regional events. They have builders groups, they have special councils, certified trainers, designated builders, and, as you know, a very large web presence. I wanted to highlight just one item here. I was involved in it, so maybe that's why I'm highlighting it, but we're talking 1993 now, EEBA had decided that it wanted to try to establish what an energy efficient building was or should be, and what things should explicitly be addressed in building such a building. And I listed there was a set of goals, and then there was 2 or 3 tiers of things until you got down to very specific items. But I wanted to list the goals. Again, remember, this is 93. EEBA is now 10 years old, essentially. Energy efficiency, of course. Moisture control was high on the list. Occupant safety, health, and comfort. And environmental impact was already working its way into the EEBA arsenal, if you will. And here are some of the folks who are on that group that led that effort. And then there was a host of EEBA and other industry reviewers that went through. Now, fortunately, I didn't find the final published criteria. I have some old drafts, but not the final. So I want to leave a few thoughts on EEBA's legacy. Of course, EEBA, as Aaron mentioned, is really, really proud of its partnerships and how important they are to growing this organization and maintaining and sustaining the organization. So I've listed some of the early ones here. The Canadian Home Builders R2000 program was active in some of the early conferences. The U.S. Department of Energy has been huge all the way back, including the Builders Challenge and Net Zero Ready Homes. Building America, of course, came along, and our national labs. Houses at Work, I mentioned earlier, was a curriculum to go out and train, carried by Building Knowledge and Construction Instruction. You'll hear more from those guys. A series of builder guides was really important early on for folks to have some reference material, some very explicitly drawings to guide them in their quest for high performance, what today we'll call high performance homes. And then again, as we moved our conferences around, our regional events, we needed help from state energy offices, the public utilities, and all of our manufacturers and suppliers have been long-term supporters of EEBA. So, if I looked at the really big picture, I'm trying to step back and squint a bit to look at the big picture. EEBA introduced, John, and his group introduced us to the house as a system. And the idea, I had a transparency of this, but I passed on that one. But the idea of the site and the climate, the building enclosure and the mechanical systems and the occupants all needed to work together for a high-performance home. But what I have seen happen over these 42 years is now we're thinking about the delivery system of high-performance homes and all the things that have to connect together to move high-performance homes into mainstream in the U.S. and beyond. There's some personal highlights along the way. I moved up here in 1988, so I started with EEBA when I was at Iowa State. Moved up to Minnesota with the Cold Climate Housing Center, and quite proud of our interaction with EEBA over the years and some of the early papers that were given during the formative years on things like range ventilation in 1986. Think about that. Moisture problems at Tri-State Homes. I don't know if anybody remembers that one, but that really upped the ante on thinking about moisture and moisture control in buildings. Radiant barriers, some of you probably are familiar. I did a paper in '92 on summertime condensation in wall cavities in cold climates. It goes back a long, long ways, and we're still struggling with that one, I believe. And performance of wood and wood-based sidings. Also, the Cold Climate Housing Group introduced the House of Pressures in 1991 at the Indianapolis Conference. It was simply a cross-section of a 3-story house, various rooms, and each room had fans interacting with it, so we could demonstrate zonal pressure differences between rooms and between the building and the room or the outside to show the impact these pressures can have on, and then there was smoke introduced to show or demonstrate the impact on combustion safety and moisture transport. From our work with EEBA, we were able to develop a lot of what I call nationally recognized curricula. Some of them I've brought here with me, of course, on overheads. But it was really a start of thinking about building science and curricula and moving, building a foundation, essentially, to move the ball forward. There were some struggles along the way. I'm going to label this low lights, but I didn't think that was really probably very positive. But there was a constant struggle, actually, to keep the membership up, keep the attendance up at the conferences, keep the money up, to keep the organization solvent. So when I was on the board of directors, we had finished a conference that left us a little short. We were going to go for the next conference, and they needed a guarantee. The board of members actually had to sign a promissory note that we would cover the debt if something were to happen. Yeah, think about taking that home to your wife, explaining it. And EEBA's message was, like I said, we were out there in front leading what we hoped the nation's home building industry to do better. And some of that was drowned out from time to time by various organizations. It isn't constructible, it isn't cost effective, what's this climate thing about, whatever. But the good news is, I wanted to finish on the positive note, through passion, perseverance, and determination, today EEBA is strong, the message is clear, and we're moving forward. A couple final thoughts. And it turns out that this road trip to high performance homes was not a sprint, as we thought it might be in 1983, 84, 85. Turned out to be quite a marathon, in fact, and we're still running it. But I wanted to share with you some of the key topics at the 1994 conference. Combustion safety, mechanical ventilation, what a concept. I have a slide over there of a homemade air exchanger that's half the size of a room that was demonstrated at the early super insulation conference. Durability of super insulated walls. And just as a side note, the folks from Sweden were there, and they were saying, we really want to understand how to build super insulated walls. And I was a little green, and in my head, I thought, well, you just build it thicker. How naive. It wasn't quite that simple, and we're still struggling with that today. But it included continuous insulation. We didn't call it exterior continuous insulation at that time, but that was in the program. Vented rain screens were all over the program. Radon indoor air quality had entered foundation moisture, performance of windows. So again, maybe not the highest note, but as I retire and reflect back on my career as an educator, it's a little depressing to just see how many people in the home building community still haven't figured this out, are still struggling with these very issues that we addressed in 1984. However, the seasoned EEBA professional knows how to mitigate combustion safety and radon, how to construct durable building enclosures, how to integrate high-performance windows and provide severe ventilation and humidity control, occupant-focused indoor air quality, or environmental quality, along with ambitious energy and emission targets. And now we're simply at the margins here trying to figure out how we can meet these performance goals or metrics while addressing sustainability, resilience, climate change, decarbonization. So in conclusion, I see a really strong and bright future for EEBA. EEBA and members will continue to be national leaders in high-performance homes through high quality builder education and training, supporting building science research and education, engaging manufacturers to reach even further, better strategies, better products, as you saw even in some of the tours that were presented here. And in the end, driving positive change in both the code and best practices arenas. And I'll close by acknowledging our leaders. These are our executive directors for EEBA, from beginning to current, present with Aaron. And I just want to give them a round of applause for their guidance and their leadership, their passion and determination to keep EEBA alive, well, and sustainable. Oh, that's right, sorry. One more job. Yeah. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Liberté. Mark's a colleague, a buddy, a friend. Mark with construction instruction, before that, Building Knowledge, before that, Shelter Source, before that, Shelter Supply. And in fact, Mark was on the original advisory board for our cold climate housing program. And we got to spend a lot of time together. Appreciate it. Glad to see him again. Mark.